Going live. You are live. Cece, stop picking your nose. You're live. I was kidding. She wasn't. Everybody's going to now rewind it and see if she was. That's funny.
Wait, she was picking her nose?
Okay.
I gotta wind that back.
No.
Welcome, TCI family, and all those people watching on the church channel and following those here. Thank you guys for coming today. It's Cece's
You're welcome.
birthday week. And Sunday is her official birthday, but can't be everywhere at one time. So the refuge, we wanted to tell Cece how much we appreciate. Most people don't know that she puts a lot of work and effort into this place. Without her, this is not a DOC approved house. Bottom line. So we're very grateful for all the work that Cece does, working with me and the actual owner of the home and negotiated the contract for Jonathan's Refuge. And then Cece was the one, most people don't know this here. Cece's the one that actually came up with the idea and said, I want all the men to be actually get their own individual lease so that they can never just be tossed up like all the other men's homes do. And that was her idea. And so the refuge is not the refuge without Cece. So we're very grateful. Thank you. Tonight I want to talk about a quick subject. It's anxiety and fear. I don't know if you guys get it. I do. I get anxiety all the time. I get mass anxiety. I'm talking anxieties that probably, you'd be like, yeah, right.
I'm an empath. I feel other people's emotions.
Some of you have seen it, or you've heard it, or you've heard me tell the stories. The most notable story everyone knows about is when I used to do tours on stadiums and speak. And I couldn't get my body to move to get to the stage. I actually had to have my executive assistant. She would grab my hand, and as long as someone grabbed my hand, I could walk, and I'd walk up to that stage. Once I stepped my first foot on that stage, I was golden. I walked up there, 12,000 people. I owned it. They were in the palms of my hands. I could do anything with the audience. Flip them, mold them, smack them, push them, prod them, help them to grow, help them to, evolve and evolve. It didn't matter. It was my world.
Involve.
Walk off that stage, and guess what? The second I got off the stage, I looked right at my executive assistant and said, that's how you do it. She'd be like, okay, except I had to hold your hand to get you to the stage. And so there's anxieties, and then there's little anxieties. There's anxieties about dancing. I don't know people that like to dance. I like to dance, but guess what I don't do? I don't dance. I didn't dance at my own wedding. Not my first wedding, and not my second wedding. I did not dance because I have anxieties. And so we have to learn to overcome anxieties. We have to overcome our fears. And everyone struggles with different ones. And so we all have them. Some of us don't even know we have it. Some of us don't realize we have an anxiety. We get worked up over some, and you get really worked up. It's the root, when you really get into a lot of those things, go back to some sort of an anxiety or fear. And fear is okay. Fear is a good thing. As an old fighter, fear is what made me survive 300 fights. Okay, fear is how I was able to win a lot of fights because I feared men, and by fearing them, I was able to be on guard. Now, as I'm no longer a fighter, do I still have fears physically when I see a guy? No, I don't fear men. I've never really feared a man since I was a young boy. Now, I am scared of men. I have a good friend of mine to this day. When I worked for the underworld and the groups I worked with, I had to go to Mexico a lot in Juarez, and I had a person assigned to me. So whenever I went anywhere, this person was with me. And this person was what they call a sicario, an assassin. Now, when I first met this cat, Juan had over 40 decapitations under his belt. 40. That was when I met him. That number was way further than that. And this guy, I don't know about you, but unless you've witnessed someone getting their head chopped off, it is the most sickest thing you could see. And this guy could chop a head off, go sit down right next to it, and have supper. And most people would say that guy, Juan, had no fear. Juan had lots of fear, actually. He just had something missing inside of his head. There was some emotion, and it's been a tie that I've been working with for decades with this guy, and I'm still very good friends. trying to convince him to retire from the line of work that he's in, trying to save a few people if I can from meeting this guy. But what my point is even the most ruthless killer, the person that we all go like, because I'd go, and I'll be honest, my guys would all be like, hey, boss, you not scared of that guy? I'm like, nah. Oh, I didn't fear that guy, but make no mistake, I was scared to death of that guy. And being scared is okay too. But how do we cope with it? That's the question. How do you cope with it? And I'm going to just share with you a couple scriptures today as we go through this, but I want to tell you something about fear. Did you know fear is not, you're not born with fear. You're born fearless, actually. Science has proven that when a child is born, that there's a reason you ever see the child walk up and stick their finger in the socket, and they will do it 2, 3, 4 times. Why? They're fearless. They have no fear. You ever see a little child? You're walking with a mom and dad, and they've got a little one who's just learning to walk, and all of a sudden, it just darts off the path right into the street. And you're like, ah! You grab the child because it's literally going into 51st Street with traffic coming right at it. Why? That child has no fear. So what I'm going to ask you to kind of do is evaluate your mind this week and ask this question. When did I start to pick up my fears? Most of you know I'm scared of spiders. It is a fear that was not a fear as a child. That fear came after I crawled under a house in Maine. It was covered with hundreds of spiders. So I have a starting point now. So I'm going to be able to start working on that point and trying to go forward with it so that I can figure a way to overcome my fear of spiders. Y'all know I'm scared of heights. We were watching a movie last night, dear, in bed.
Oh, yeah.
We were watching a movie. I couldn't tell you what the name of this thing is. It's on one of my channels. It's about a girl, and she is just bad to the bone. And it's a little crazy. It's World War II, and she's in the army, and she's trying to get on this plane, and then to smuggle her baby out of the war area, and then they find out she's not who she says she is, and then out of nowhere, this weird gremlin is now crawling around the outside of the plane, and I'm like, okay, you lost me. I'm not interested in this kind of a movie. But then the lady has to rescue her baby who the gremlin took outside, and this lady starts, it's a movie, okay? Understand this. This is a movie. And the lady, she's like, you don't know how far I'll go for that box, which is her baby inside of it. And she like hand crawls as this plane's doing whatever, a couple hundred miles an hour, which we all know that's not physically possible. That's not the point I'm getting to is this. She was hanging for a second. I looked right at my wife, said, oh, no, 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 no. And I started going to shut it off. And she's like, what? Whoa, whoa, whoa. I like this. It's tough. I'm like, I don't care what you, I had to go like this. I was looking at the wall. I'm just staring at her like, okay, I'm waiting. Oh, okay, it's over. Yeah. Big old tough me. This young man watched a guy in Puyallup grab me by my throat, attempt to lift me up, and I just stood there with no problem. It doesn't bother me. Of course, I gave him a good knock and wrung it loose, didn't we, buddy? No fear. But why is it that when I go to stand on top of a building, I get terrified? So I found out some of the things that caused that as a young boy. Now I overcome them by doing mountain climbing. I climb mountains. Jesse and Uber, we were on a mountain called Mount Dickerman, for those that don't know. Mount Dickerman
Amazing blueberries.
What was it?
Amazing blueberries.
They were awesome. But this mountain was 5,700 feet in the air. Now, when you start out at an alpine start, guess what? It doesn't matter because you can't see but only 2 feet in front of you. Unless you're Jesse, who didn't have his cam light, or Uber, who had to borrow mine. You guys you couldn't see. You didn't notice it until 3 hours after we had hit the trail because we started at 3 a.m. And then all of a sudden you look down and you go, whoa, because you're looking down 4,000 feet. And then you don't realize that as you're on the edge, Cam says, look to your right. And you look and you realize, oh, we're not on the edge. This is a ledge that's coming out over. You got to go under to get to the bottom. It was so terrifying. How am I able to stand on that and look? Each time I just etch a little further, a little closer, a little closer. and each mountain is progressively harder. And it's, so there was a couple paths where our feet only had a couple spots, and it was only a couple. But I tell you what, that was very difficult for me. On one side, you hear Cam going, "Whoa, JB, don't look to your left," and then all of a sudden you hear Jesse, "Forget the left, don't look at the right." And I'm like, "Oh my God, why are you two even saying this?" Well, it's comical, and they know I'm scared of it. I don't blame them. I do the same thing. But by climbing, I allow myself to take a little step a little further and get out of my comfort zone. So what you have to do is you got to break out of your comfort zone. If you ever want to get out of over your anxiety, if you ever want to be free, and well, here's what I mean by free. There is a freedom that comes from fearing nothing. And the word fear, broken down, F-E-A-R, stands for face, everything, and rise. Now, you have to face your fear. So what I'd like you to do is to analyze, what is it you fear? Just write down 2 or 3 or 4 top of your top things that make you fearful.
There's also another acronym for it. Fear. Face everything and run.
I prefer the rise.
Right?
Because rising allows us to overcome and conquer. And I'm not trying to teach people how to run away from fears. I'm trying to teach them how to actually adjust, look at that fear, stand up to it, and rise above it. And it's not something you guys can just do. Sure, there's medications that can help. Absolutely. No, not at all. I'll tell you why, man. Medications are very healthy. Medications save my life. I take 20 prescription medications a day. Take my 20 prescription medications a day away from me, my heart's dead within probably about 3 days. So medications are actually fantastic. They're allowing people to live longer. Medications allow people to be stable, mood stabilizers. They allow all kinds of things. So don't be afraid of medications. But I'm not telling you to go get medicated. I'm telling you to go out there and look at your fears. So what you first need to do is address them, write them down, come up with what your top 3 fears are, and then try to figure out how you started that fear, because you weren't born with it. I wasn't born scared of spiders. If you talk to my parents, I didn't have a problem walking up to anybody. Dad had a 2,500 member church that he started in the park, and we'd have up to 2,500 people coming before we bought a big building and everything. And I would take, and you get a plate of food, and just a little 4-year-old boy, I'd take my plate and I'd go over to the other part of the park where nobody that was what we would call the good Christians would go. It was where all the drug addicts hid. It's where the prostitutes slept in between working. It's where all the people that were the undesirable. And I looked at those people, and they were my people. And I was 4 years old. And I'd walk up to the scariest, ugliest, burliest guy I could and say, "Hi, my name's Jonathan. Are you hungry? Would you like my food?" And I'd give it to him. So I wasn't born with fear. I never was afraid to stand on a stage until something happened on a stage. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, I now know how I started that. So when you look at it, fear is not taught, learned, but one is not born with it. So then we acquire it. Stop allowing ourselves, including, I'm talking, by the way, when I talk to you and I say stop allowing yourself, I'm actually saying it to me first. You can ask my wife and anyone that's known me for years, Cam and others, if I'm talking on a subject, it's because I'm talking to myself. I'm preaching to myself. And so what you have to do is you have to address the fear, name it, figure it out, list it, track down where it started. And then you need to talk to your mentors, your pastors, the leaders in your life and say, how can I overcome this? You can come to me and I can help you do that. We literally do this for a living. We take people and stretch their faith, be it out hiking, be it taking men with me to start businesses, people who are novices at that and have never started a business before. These are fearful things. They're hard to overcome. You know, most people never become a business owner. Do you want to know why? It's not because they don't have a great business idea. It's because they're fearful of it. And so people have to grab those fears. They have to face them. And that's what we want to do today. Now, I want to talk about Psalms 118:6. The scripture is something that brought me a lot of comfort in my life. And it says, "The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" When I first really started to analyze that, I'll tell you what I said. My answer was real simple because a professor read it once in seminary. And I said, They can kill you. And he's like, yeah, they can. They can torture you. And I remember getting tortured once in an interesting situation many, many, many decades ago in Mexico. And I can tell you this right now.
Sounds like you had a lot of fun in Mexico.
I did. But I can tell you this now about some things. I hung on to a man named Viktor Frankl. Most of you probably don't know the name. Viktor was one of the world's leading and greatest psychologists ever. Viktor was in the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And he came out of there, and his book on it is amazing. Changed my life. My dad took me to see him at a couple seminars. And that man, he said this from the pulpit of the stadium we were listening to. He said, the Nazis controlled everything. When we went to the bathroom, if we could even go. When we could eat, if we even could eat. What we ate, what we wore, where we slept. Every movement of our day. And if you, just so you know, in this concentration camp, you had a bunkmate. Me and Paul were bunked up. Paul got a sore on his back. I'd have to take care of it for him. I'd have to do things to, and here's what he had to do. They'd find maggots and things, and you'd literally put it in there to help clean out the wound. They had, you were each other's nurse, doctor. You were, his exact words, we were closer to that bunkmate than a wife. Now let that sink in for a second. Yet, that bunkmate died. It was a death sentence because you had no one to take care of you and look out after you. Who was going to help pick your wounds? Nobody, because they all had bunkies. And he was asked the question, didn't you just, how can you say the Nazis didn't control you then? And he said, real simple, my mind. You see, you can torture us all you want. You can take and put me in prison. You guys can throw me out, toss me outside the street. You can take all my companies away from me. My wife can leave me. My sons can abandon me. My family can spit on me. But you know what you can't take away from me? How I think about it. How I feel about it. What I feel about it. Jonathan Brown is the only person that can control that. If I have my control in my mind, only because I have a spouse that can help me control it, or a friend or a pastor, then the truth is I'm not controlling it. Someone else is controlling it for me. We have to get to that point like Viktor where he realized not even a Nazi and all the hell he went through could control his mind. And that's why you guys hear me say all the time, 10% of life is what happens to you. The hearts, the brains, the tumors, and all those things you get, that's just 10% of life. Your child dying, just 10% of life. And I know you say, that's cold, Rev. I've had a child die, not just one. And so I can tell you that's still just 10% of life. How you deal with it is what matters. Now, in John 14:27, here's an interesting thing I'm going to end with. This is the Christ speaking. There's a difference between Jesus in the Bible and the Christ. Jesus was just a man from born till 30 years of age. He did not become the Christ, which in Hebrew is the anointed one. They changed that when he turned 30 in the Bible. You'll see it went from Jesus, Ben Joseph, which is son of Joseph, to Jesus the Christ. The Christ means the anointed one. And here's what the anointed one said. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world does. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. The circle I circled in the beginning was peace I leave with you, my. He doesn't leave Jesus ben Joseph's peace. Jesus ben Joseph was a man, the son of Joseph. That's not the peace he left us. The peace came from the Christ, from the anointed one, from the creator of the universe. Whatever name you need to throw on it, I don't care. The consciousness that oversees all of this, that is the peace that he left us. And he said, I don't give it to you like the world, because no offense, I give things to people all the time. And even though I've gotten to a point where I don't expect anything back, in the back of my head, I'm like, come on, man, I gave that guy this, and I did that for that girl. And that husband and wife, they only got that house because I gave them the down payment. So even though I can say I do that, I hope I can get better at that. I'm still human and I still have those same ideas in my head. But not the Christ.
To acknowledge.
He said this. He's not going to give it to you like the world does, which means there's no strings attached. There's no strings attached to the peace that I'm talking about today. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. That's how I face my fears. That's why when my wife walks with me into a hospital for the next challenge that I have, I just walk in like a stud. And it's not because I'm some bad to the bone dude. It's not. I'm actually a little kid inside who just wants to help people get over those fears, get over those anxieties, and show them a way to do it. And you do that by going over the stuff that we just talked about. Find out where your fears are, name them, list them, look at how you got them, and unlearn how you learned it. So let's take the programming that our parents and society has done to us, and let's break that chain and say, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not walking in fear. At Jonathan's Refuge, that's one of the things that this woman did as I ended. Everyone in this house used to be afraid because at all men's homes, they have a contract that you sign. That contract says they usually call it a programming fee. You pay a programming fee, and they have different words for them and things. But in that contract at all men's homes, especially all of them in this county, they can toss you out tomorrow morning if they say you are not programming. They do not have to have a reason. You'll call the police and say, nope. They're going to tell you the same thing. Get your stuff and get out. Okay? She didn't want people to be in fear anymore. So one of the things that she asked me when we built Jonathan's Refuge was, let's make it so people don't fear anymore. And that's what we try to do, is to help people overcome their fears. So I love you guys. God loves you. As I leave, I'm going to let the birthday girl close with anything she has to say. Ma'am?
I don't know why I never expect this. Walk with peace in your heart. Kindness. Give somebody a compliment. Their shoes, their hair. Lift up their heart a little bit. You'd be surprised at what it does for them. And you don't need reward for it. You don't need to know what you did for them. Just know that when they went home and went to sleep, that they're probably smiling about that compliment. Because the simplest things make a huge difference in my life. So I know they probably do for you guys too.
Love you guys. See you next week. There you go. I'll start with compliments. Paul?